in, Sun Devil fans, to this week's episode of Echo from the Buttes. I'm your host, Tom Harden. With me, as always, I have Andrew Hazlett and Austin Bundy, back from our bye-week break, and we've got some more Sun Devil football action coming up. Saturday's game from Utah. Before we dive into that, we are going to recap a little bit of the hockey action that took place last weekend. The Sun Devils hosted number 5 ranked Penn State, and if I'm being completely honest, the Devils were given a rude awakening to playing against such a high-caliber team. Ultimately, could prove to be very helpful in the long run, playing up against such such a vaunted opponent. But Andrew, you were in the arena as well. What were some of your takeaways from last weekend's series?
My biggest takeaway is that, what was it? 1 for like 12 on power play all weekend long. That's just inexcusable. You got to be better than that, and they obviously know that. And the other thing, 40 shots on Connor Hasley both games, north of 40 shots, I should say, which the D-Corps, I think, has got to take some steps, figure it out, not have that high amount of shots on Hasley. For me, I'd like to see Hasley get these 2 starts in the Icebreaker Tournament next week. I don't know what you guys have to say about that, but just kind of moving forward, Friday's game was just kind of one that was Penn State controlled for the majority of the 2 periods, and Arizona State controlled the middle period. But Saturday's game felt like the one that got away. ASU kind of dominated those first 2 periods up, and then they kind of just gave it away at the end. Didn't score on the power play. Anthony Dowd had 2 penalties that I think were costly. One where he, after one of the Penn State players, I forgot which one, mowed over Hasley. Dowd decided to get back at him, which I get, you want to step up, stick up for your goalie, but I think situationally you just got to be aware in those moments of what the score is, what you're doing, who you're playing. And then he got one later, which you get penalties, but 2-2, and then that put Penn State up on the power play, and the best player on the ice scored. Simple as that.
And that penalty after the hit on Hasley, Dowd's wearing a letter. That's not the type of leadership that you want to see out of one of your alternate captains. Arguably, he should know much better than to retaliate in that situation, because you're always going to get called for those retaliatory penalties.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are putting down here, but like you said, Andrew, Saturday was definitely the game that the Sun Devils had the best opportunity to pull off an upset, and it's disappointing to see that they weren't able to pull it off, but I was encouraged at least to see that even in Friday's game, they were hanging around with Penn State. Like, this team showed not just flashes, they showed some consistent stretches of being able to keep up with some of the best programs in the nation here. Granted, I don't think they should be penalized very much for losing to the number 5 team in the nation, especially when they were leading that team 2-0 on Saturday and had clawed all the way back to take a lead in the second period on Friday. If anything, I feel like that just shows that this team has got the talent and it's got the pedigree to be able to be worthy of a ranking, and the rest of the season is going to be a proving ground for Greg Powers and his boys to show that, hey, we have what it takes. We just let it get away from us. We didn't finish the job. So if they can go out there and play their game and finish the job, play all 3 periods of hockey, they're going to probably see themselves in the NCAA tournament.
And ultimately, the Sun Devils were not penalized in the polls for the sweep last weekend, dropping only to number 15 after opening the season at number 14. It's still a little bit too early to see how the new wrinkle with the NPI rankings will affect the Sun Devils, but it is worth noting that Penn State did lose tonight to Clarkson. That's something to keep an eye on as the NPI calculations start to come out, because while one thing that was removed that I've long disliked was the record of your opponent's strength of schedule does still factor in, and that loss to Clarkson will be an interesting data point in those rankings as they start to come out. Now, Andrew, like you, the power play or lack thereof was really the biggest opportunity for me. Like you said, 1 for 12 over the weekend, and my biggest missed opportunity came on Saturday with a 5-on-3 opportunity that lasted for over a minute. Tied 2-2, that's a golden opportunity to take the lead back and set the tone in the third period. Sun Devils were unable to capitalize, and it hurt them in the long run. The biggest note for me, too, was all of the scoring for both teams came down at one end of the ice. I don't think I've ever seen that in any ASU hockey game since Mullet opened, but all the goals were scored away from the student section. I'd like to see both teams figure out a way to score at both ends of the ice and give you guys down on that other end a little something to watch.
Yeah, poor Gavin McKenna. He had to skate all the way down the ice to do his Forks Down celebration. Like, what's that all about? Gotta put in all that effort.
For him, I've got the world's smallest violin for him. But coming up this weekend, the Sun Devils are hosting the Icebreaker Tournament put on by College Hockey Inc. And a little background on what the Icebreaker is. Originally started in 1997 as an exhibition tournament to open the season, showcasing highly ranked teams from all different conferences. After the first season, it was permanently put into part of the regular season schedule. It's a very highly sought after event, not only to play in, but to host. And that's something that Arizona State submitted for as soon as Mullet opened, was the opportunity to host. And they were granted that opportunity for this year. Coming in for this weekend will be Notre Dame, Quinnipiac, and Alaska. Arizona State will be playing Notre Dame tomorrow night at 7 p.m. After the Quinnipiac-Alaska game at 3 p.m. And then Arizona State's opponent will be determined by the results on Friday's games. Winners playing winners in the championship game, losers playing losers in the consolation game. Worth noting that Arizona State will play the 7 p.m. game on Saturday, regardless of whether they are playing in the consolation or the championship. This is something that I've always had a keen eye on at the start of the season. I always love these in-season tournaments, and hosting the unofficial open of the college hockey regular season, that's a great feather in the cap for our program. And seeing some recent national powers, Quinnipiac with their national championship in 2023. Notre Dame, while they've been on a little bit of a downward trend the last few years, they made some noise in the national tournaments throughout the 2010s. And even Alaska, despite being an independent team in the 2022-23 season, they made a very strong push to gain an at-large bid as an independent program. It's going to be an exciting weekend of hockey. I'll be there in Section 106. Andrew, you're going to be at both games. Austin, you will be watching from the comforts of your own home. What are you looking for this weekend to bounce back from Penn State?
I think I'm going to go off of what Andrew was saying before. Power plays. They need to convert, and they need to convert often. I want to see that these guys know how to take advantage of the man advantage. This is an opportunity to go out and prove it, like you said, against some recent powers. Notre Dame is not a team to turn your nose up at. And if you get past them, you're more than likely playing a Quinnipiac. And if I remember correctly, Quinnipiac eliminated ASU in the 2019 tournament. Isn't that right?
They did, yes.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a revenge game that you kind of want to get there. And I think that's definitely a resume booster if they can pull that off. Is this the tournament that replaced the one over at Gila River a few years ago?
No, the Desert Hockey Classic is still played in January. This is an entirely different tournament that rotates across the country.
Got it. Okay, good to know. But yes, the power play is going to be the first thing I'm looking for. If I don't know how many opportunities they're going to get, but I would venture to guess they're going to get somewhere around at least 2 to 3 at the very least. I'd like to see them convert on at least 2 of those. I'd like to see them get some positive numbers and put some scoring up on the man advantage. We all know they're good at 5-on-5. I'd like to see them figure out how to get their special teams going and convert on these man advantages.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention last week they allowed a shorthanded goal to Penn State as well. It just shows you how ineffective the power play was. But for me, it's going to be the defense. Can they just step up? They, like I said, last week allowed way too many shots on net on Connor Hasley. And I would imagine Connor Hasley's going to be in net both games, just from what I would think. You're going to be facing two different teams. I would think Arizona State winds up beating Notre Dame, and assuming that they beat Notre Dame, I would want my best goalie to be in the tournament deciding game. And then, as kind of the reverse slowdown, I'd want my best goalie to start the first game so that Arizona State has the best chance to move on. Not saying I'm not a believer in Samuel Urban, the freshman from Slovakia, but I think his time's going to come either next weekend at Augustana or the week after at Miami. I definitely think you'll see him in one of, or if not both of those series.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's Connor Hasley's net for both games this weekend. He played some phenomenal goalie this weekend. Ultimately was let down by the defense in front of him. I see no reason for Coach Powers to shake that trust in him. I think it's his net, and it's not even one of those his net until further notice. I think you want that senior presence to lay the groundwork and provide that base for Urban to develop under and alongside. Urban will get his chance. Like you, Andrew, I would imagine he will get some time in the Augustana series, but let him see some games at the NCAA level before throwing him into the fire. This tournament, I don't think, is the right time to do so, barring any unfortunate development. But my big improvement that I want to see is the top six forwards. The fourth line was phenomenal. Sam Alfano, Johnny Waldron, those guys were incredible and really just the standard bearer for the offense from my vantage point. And I want to see the veteran presence on the top six really step up and carry the game. We've got a very stacked lineup on paper, and these guys unfortunately looked like a team that really only had a week of practice under their belts, and that's somewhat true, as these guys were not able to practice full time up until the week leading into the series. Now that there's been ample time to recover and learn from last weekend's series, I'm looking for the top line. I'm looking for Colin Potter to show us what we know that he can be, and show us what he's developed over the offseason in his international play. I'm looking for Cruz Lucius to live up to the belief that Coach Powers has had in him. I just haven't seen it from Lucius. I'm hoping that he proves me wrong throughout the season, but that's really where I'm at with what I want to see out of this team throughout this week. Like we said, both games will be at 7 p.m. Friday against Notre Dame, Saturday against either Alaska or Quinnipiac. Those games will be broadcast locally in the Phoenix area on Fox 10 Extra. That's My 45 on your channel guide. They will also be streaming all four games of the Icebreaker on nchc.tv. Go to nchc.tv for more details on how to watch. Pivoting over to football. The Sun Devils are returning to action at Utah, and this is really it's an understated rivalry, in my opinion. Would you guys agree with that?
It's not a rivalry.
It's not a rivalry. I've seen things on Twitter, which it's Twitter, take everything with a dump truck of salt on there, that it's more of, hey, our Arizona State, they kind of have a rivalry with BYU more than Utah. Let's gang up on them. Utah, let's hit on Arizona too. It's more of a enemy of the enemy is your friend type thing, and this is what this game kind of feels like from a fan, like just looking at the fans' perspective, but from the actual football team's perspective, you're going into enemy territory. I'm not gonna understate that at all. Utah is an opponent that ASU has seen many times in the Pac-12 and now into the Big 12. These teams don't love each other. Simple as that.
I think it's more of a proximity rivalry if we're going to go with anything like that. This is Utah. I mean, Utah wasn't going to get Colorado to be its rival, even though they were the two that entered the Pac-12 at the same time. So Utah just went for its next nearest desert opponent in ASU, and so that's where you're getting this this wannabe, hey, little brother type thing from Utah. I'm not going to deny that the ASU Utah games haven't been entertaining and haven't been rivalry-esque. There have been some pretty entertaining matchups in the past. And I think ASU, like you said, Andrew, ASU and Utah, they don't like each other. There's no love lost in this matchup in the series history here. But I wouldn't go so far as to describe it as a rivalry. I feel like those types of things are reserved for some sacred histories, and you need a little bit more of a long-standing beef to get a rivalry going. So I don't think Utah can really claim that yet. That's not to say that this matchup, historically, as long as it's existed, hasn't been one of the most entertaining in ASU's modern history.
It's maybe a rivalry in the sense of like how the Diamondbacks claim the Dodgers as rivals, and the Dodgers look at the Diamondbacks like a little brother and kind of scuff them off to the side as they're looking at the Giants as their main rival.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Padres is their second rival.
But looking at the lead up to this game, Utah is going to be up for some revenge after getting knocked off in Tempe last season when they were ranked number 16 in the nation. And that game really was the start to ASU's rise to the top of the Big 12 and run to the college football playoff. And going into Rice Eccles Stadium, that's never a fun place to play. I can't remember the last time ASU won a night game in Salt Lake City, if ever. I've looked back, even trying to look back into the 70s, and I've seen no evidence that ASU has ever won a night game at Rice Eccles.
It's going to be even tougher without your quarterback. We got some breaking news out of Pete Thamel this evening with Sam Levitt is apparently going to be doubtful for Saturday's game. He was downgraded from probable this evening.
I see this. Wow.
Never a good thing, and we know what happened at Cincinnati when Sam was out last season, and how that result did not go in the Sun Devils' favor. And is it Jeff Sims' time? What do you guys think about that?
It's never good if you got to go to your backup in these situations, but I mean, it's next man up mentality. You mentioned the Cincinnati week. I was just talking to a friend of mine earlier this afternoon that I had a feeling this felt like it was going to be ASU Cincinnati week, especially when you had a big ranked matchup. The very next week, you've got Texas Tech coming to Tempe next week, and what it would probably be a ranked matchup in the Big 12 if ASU happens to pull off a win here. But I feel like this is one of those where, especially now when you have an injured quarterback, you didn't have Sam last year in the Cincinnati game. This feels like a game that you potentially overlook. And you end up not being able to pull off a victory because injuries and because the opponent was not taken as seriously. Now I feel like you got to take them as seriously as possible. I still like the defense going up against them, but it's going to come down now to whether or not whoever steps in under center for the Sun Devils is able to communicate and able to deliver the ball to these talented wide receivers they have. They got Jalen Moss back. You're going to have Jordan Tyson. You're going to have Shimon Mateer available, Derek Eusebio. I mean, that's a pretty talented lineup for whoever's going to be at quarterback. It's going to be how ready did Kenny get them for this game during the week.
Yeah, I'm surprised. After I was there at practice Wednesday, I was not there Tuesday, so I cannot attest to anything that happened or did not happen on Tuesday. But for me, with the injury report on, what was that, Wednesday night, that we saw him as probable. From the info that have been gathered and what I was told, I was shocked to see him on the injury report, but not surprised. And if you had asked me up until this report that came out very recently, I would have said, yeah, he's playing. But now seeing that he's doubtful means I don't know exactly what happened, but there might have been a setback with him on what he's dealing with. I've noticed things in practice where I said to myself, that doesn't look quite right, but I could say that with half the team. So it isn't fair to say something doesn't look quite right when he's not in the injury report. So that would be unfair to him. And I also know Levitt, he said he's going to have his family at the game on Saturday, which if he's unable to go, that's really going to be unfortunate for him, because I know he was looking forward to this game. He was looking forward to go out and say, in front of his family, yeah, I'm good, And he also said in his interview on, I think it was Tuesday, that I wound up looking back and watching, he said that he saw a stat that was Utah has won 90-something% of their night games. So this is going to be a tough atmosphere for Arizona State, regardless who's under center.
He looked fine at the practice where the video came out of Kenny squirting the water bottle on the balls there. I mean, I'm not sure what happened, who knows, like you said, I don't know if there's a setback with something, or if maybe you just happened to injure something off the field at some point, and now that's got him doubtful. I don't know. I mean, I didn't see anything during the game 2 weeks ago that would have affected him, but that's going to be interesting to see what exactly comes of this. I mean, does Kenny speak at all again before the game?
He does not in front, unless there's a press conference that is held that is unexpected, but there's nothing expected. And I think he talked to, what was it, I think Wednesday was the last time he talked, and the injury report hadn't came out yet at that point.
All right, well, it'll be interesting to see if he makes any sort of comments, or anybody in the media is able to get something out of that building before Saturday's kickoff. You'd like to think this is maybe Kenny with some gamesmanship, maybe throwing him out there as doubtful, so that way there's some changes in defensive scheming for Utah. I mean, that would be a huge gamble on Kenny's part, and probably an unnecessary gamble. But you never know with the madman and his ways.
Well, given that Kenny's come out and said that he's never really looking to put any gamesmanship out there with his injury reports, I would expect this to be a legitimate downgrade. Mm-hmm. But like I said, you never know nobody knows what's going on inside Kenny's head except for Kenny himself, and we will have to wait and see until Saturday to see who is going to be under center. But one thing for me that is critical to no matter who is under center is going to be the weather. There is rain expected in the forecast, and I think that could play a little bit more into ASU's favor with the ground game. Of course, you do always have to be aware of Devin Dampier and his dual threat ability, but the deep backfield that ASU has, even with Tyson Brown listed on the injury report as probable, I think that would play more into ASU's favor going into Saturday's kickoff.
Yeah, we talked about this, 2 weeks ago against TCU, a possibility of rain. Just really same thing there, as possibility of rain. We saw the wet ball drills from on Twitter on practice. Yeah, everyone's going to be playing in the weather, so it's not going to be an advantage to anyone, or really the only advantage is who can prepare for it best. And until we see anything on Saturday, we don't know. We can say, well, this team has the better run game on paper, but everything's different in the rain. The balls are wet. How can you grip the ball? How can your feet get into the ground, not slip and fall? Not just the running backs, but offensive linemen who are trying to move the defensive line further down. Can they get the push off the ground that they need to? And same thing, defensive line trying to move the offensive line back. Can they, really same thing, get the push off the ground when they need to without slipping and falling? That could open up a hole for a running back to have a huge explosive play. So that's what it's really about, is just, can you stay upright? Can you hold on to the ball in the rain?
That ball protection is going to be the most important thing going into Saturday. It's important every week, but especially when you got weather involved, ball protection is going to be the key to the game. Keep an eye on the turnover battle, because whoever wins that is probably going to win the game.
I agree.
And one thing we did mention is that ASU has always had a historically tough time going up to Salt Lake City and playing in night games. But one thing of note is Utah is 0-5 at home since joining the Big 12. Is that something that you think could negate that night game advantage, disadvantage for the Sun Devils?
Yes and no. I think it's obviously only a what you said, it was like a 5-6 game sample size. So that's not much of anything in terms of, oh wow, this is not really starting to get remarkable yet, but once you get into that, I think that 10-ish range, then I think there's start to be smoke to that fire. But you play a lot of great teams in the conference. Utah just had a really down year last year as a whole anyway. So with that said, that's only a season of work in one game so far. That's not much there. Also, when ASU last traveled to Utah, Arizona State, they got blown out like 55-3, I think the score was. I didn't watch that game because I knew it was going to be a bad game, and also I was at NASCAR, so
I've done my best to predict that game took place.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors. I don't think it's like you can look at selective things, but with the big picture, there's going to be like a home field advantage for Utah. How much is it going to be? It depends on how well the fans show up. With the possibility of rain, we saw Arizona State's fans show up 2 weeks ago against TCU. Can Utah replicate that is the question that really says, oh, Utah has the home field advantage if Rice-Eccles Stadium can get rocking.
Yeah, my memory of any games at Rice-Eccles Stadium is that place gets pretty dang loud. And I mean, it's not even just with ASU games. I mean, we remember the Holy War last year against BYU. That was pretty dang loud. And I think ASU is going to have a similar problem as to when they went down to Starkville against Mississippi State. I don't think it's going to be up to that level, to an SEC level. But we have seen before where that stadium gets loud and it's bothersome for ASU on offense. I think it's going to be critical for them to limit procedural mistakes. I don't think they can afford to have many of those false start penalties, especially in the second half. Those are going to kill them. If they can limit those mistakes, if they can protect the ball, I think they're going to do just fine regardless of whatever stadium they're playing in. And Andrew, I think the formal term you're going for is statistically significant when it comes to the sample size of how many games Utah's lost in the Big 12 at home so far. It's not really statistically significant yet, but if ASU were to continue the trend, you are heading towards that territory, and I'm sure that's something that we all kind of want to see.
And speaking of things that are statistically significant, the play on third downs is going to be my biggest matchup to watch. Utah is highly efficient on their third down offense, converting 61% of third down opportunities, while ASU's defense is strong at limiting third down conversions, ranking 34th in the FBS at 33.3% conversion rate. Which side do you feel has the edge? Andrew, let's start with you on this one.
Good question. I would give the nod to the Arizona State defense. Like I really haven't seen an offense that has just commanded the ball for a good portion of a game. Like Mississippi State was the best example of that for that in that first half, and even still they look to be like I would call that a good offense, but the second half of that game, that offense just disappeared except for that one drive at the end of the game. So I at the end of the day, for me, has the defense really played bad enough to lose them any games? I would say no. I would also say that's debatable, but I would say no. And I think the defense is going to continue to do that. I think you'll see the defense dominate, especially if it's raining. Possibility of thunderstorms too, so it might not be raining. It might be post-rain as well, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you there and give the edge to the defense. I mean, Utah's offense has been inconsistent, to say the least, this season. I'm not saying they can't be deadly. They probably will be at home and with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder now, especially out trying to get revenge for last year's game. But I still like our defense. I still like the odds for our defense against that offense. It's going to be about getting enough pressure home. I mean, we all know Dampier can run the ball. He's a dual-threat quarterback. But if you pressure him out of the pocket, pressure him into mistakes, pressuring him into making quicker throws than he's used to, then ASU is going to potentially have their way against this offense. If you are forcing Utah to run things up the gut, I think we have the bodies to be able to plug the holes, so that way you're limiting the damage on first and second down, forcing Dampier to have to throw on third and potentially be pressured into those mistakes. It's very tough to keep that up for an entire 60 minutes, but I think ASU has the bodies, has the stamina, and has the game plan to be able to employ that.
On coming off of performances against 3 straight potent offenses, I'm going to give the nod to the defense as well. And given the misgivings that we've had about the defense in prior weeks, I think that that body of work leading up to the bye week certainly sets a good foundation for the defense and gives us the, dare I say, optimism that they can slow down Devin Dampier. But my biggest question is going to be, how does the bye week affect that preparation? How does the extra week really factor into keeping that routine? And now coming 2 weeks removed from the last game, can the defense replicate that same level of play?
It's interesting to note that Utah themselves are coming off a bye week as well. Just like, if you're a believer that, the bye weeks cause such an advantage or the bye weeks cause such a disadvantage, well, both teams are coming off a bye week, so whatever advantage there is, it offsets. Both teams are in the same sandbox. Only real difference is Arizona State played their game Friday versus Utah playing their game Saturday 2 weeks ago. But that's not really that huge at the end of the day. It's still Arizona State and Utah coming off of a bye week, and I think both teams are going to be ready. I think both teams started their preparation a little earlier than what they would normally do. I think it's going to help both teams, but also what are both teams going to do to adjust? I would imagine both teams are going to try to implement new things, possibly schematically on offense and defense, and who knows what they might try to do differently.
I feel like it's a little bit of a rarity. Like, when was the last time we've seen both teams coming off a bye to play each other? I feel like that doesn't happen very often in college football or football in general. Anyone coming off a bye tends to be playing a team that already played last week. And that typically gives the advantage to the team that played the previous week. I know, especially in the playoffs, there's a lot of people that talk about byes being a momentum killer. In the regular season, it's a little bit different. I don't think ASU would have had any problems. I mean, granted, we see there's an injury problem, which is, again, is another rarity coming out of a bye week when you have somebody going into a bye week healthy and coming out with a doubtful injury designation. Again, like you said, Andrew, both teams are going to be ready. Whoever is under center for ASU is going to have to be ready. They've had 2 weeks now to take some reps. I would be very skeptical to think that whoever is backing up Levitt did not get some sort of reps under their belt. If there was any sort of skepticism over Levitt's health, I'm not saying he got a whole week of it, but whoever it is, I'm sure is going to be prepared enough to go out there and play.
I would have to imagine that would wind up being Jeff Sims. Yes, you have 3 other quarterbacks on the roster. I think Cameron Dyer is still going to be out. I'm not sure about that. That's something I don't know off the top of my head. I know he's been dealing with something. That's
Cam Dyer is listed as out on the injury report, and I thought I had seen rumblings that he might not even appear at all this season. I haven't seen any confirmation for or against that opinion, though.
Yeah, he's a true freshman, and I think if his time might be coming down the line. And then you look at Arizona State's 2 other quarterbacks. You've got Christian Hunt and Michael Butter Tollefson, as he prefers to be called. That is the actual nickname.
That is a name.
Regardless if it's going to be Hunt or Butter, both of them have been playing on the scout team, sharing scout team reps. I think Christian Hunt has got the majority of those. That's not something I really paid attention to. Because I didn't think they'd be going down to their 3rd quarterback possibly this early. But regardless, gonna have to start paying attention to that now, see what the split is on that. But regardless, it's gonna be Jeff Sims, I would have to imagine. From what I saw on Wednesday, I don't think I saw Jeff Sims running with the ones, but I could be wrong. I got to split time between both offensive field, defensive field, and with that said, I was watching both offense and defense, and then there was a time where I was watching special teams too. So.
You mean you can't be able to run all at once?
No, I've not figured out how to split myself into 2 different bodies to be at 2 places at once. I am working on that, though. We'll see if we can get that at some point in the future. That would be really great for my reporting abilities if I could do that. That would be.
You just need to get you into the Gamma lab.
I think if I could do that, I might become the best reporter ever, possibly.
When you figure that out, teach me your ways as well. I'd be very keenly interested in figuring that out as well. But, going back to the bye weeks, there's a lot different between going 2 weeks between games, and you bring up the argument about the college football playoff going 4 weeks without games for some of those teams with byes. And given that both ASU and Utah are coming off byes, it does even out the playing field quite a little bit. The other big thing that I'm watching is that both ASU and Utah are very adept at time of possession, both ranking 1-2 in the Big 12 in time of possession. Who do you give the edge to being able to maximize the clock? Austin, let's start with you.
If Sam Levitt was under center, I would have given it to the Sun Devils, but I'm going to go and give the edge right now to Utah because they're going to have their guy, they're going to have their system, they're going to try and play it exactly as they went through in their practices. ASU is not going to have the guy that typically would be running the offense and being able to set the pace. That's not to say that Jeff Sims maybe can't do that at all, but there's going to be some hiccups. I think fans are going to have to manage their expectations. There's going to be some mistakes made. There's going to be some times where you think they're going to convert on a 3rd down and keep the ball moving, or make some sort of play on first down that gets dropped in transition. There's going to be mistakes by this Jeff Sims-led offense, and I think Utah is going to be the one that's humming a little bit more and more time of possession, which is why the turnover battle and defensive pressure, that's going to be the biggest thing to watch, because the defense is going to have to step up big and steal possessions for ASU.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the team who can run the ball the best. I think it's simple as that. Granted, if you have Jeff Sims or an injured Sam Levitt at quarterback, I think you're going to that obviously is going to hamper your quarterback part of the run game and even your passing game. So it's going to hamper the run game regardless. You're going to be running the ball a bit more. But with that said, I still like Arizona State's run defense a lot. They've been extremely effective this season. I like what I've seen out of guys like CJ Fight, Prince Dorba, Clayton Smith as well comes to mind. And then the linebackers too, Jordan Crook, Tate Romney, doing a good job, Elijah O'Neal as well. I think he's a defensive end, but regardless, those 6 guys in particular have been just monsters up the middle in terms of just stopping that run, and even the ends too. I don't know, I said monsters up the middle, but they've been monsters regardless. And I like that run defense a lot. I am a believer in the that run defense. Yes, I know Devin Dampier's a running quarterback with kind of what the triple option is what the Arizona State coaches have been calling it. So we'll see if they can stop it. I believe they can. I believe Arizona State is going to have the better run game, and then therefore dominate the time of possession.
And we all know that Devin Dampier does have that dual threat ability, but outside of Dampier, who is the biggest player for each of you guys that the Sun Devil defense has to key in on and slow down to impact Dampier's play? Andrew, it's good to start with you.
I think it's going to be just the offensive line as a whole. If you can mess with that offensive line, which is a very strong offensive line. Saw a mock draft that had 2 Utah offensive linemen go in the first round. So these are some really good offensive linemen, and if you can just beat them more often than they beat you, I think you can have a successful game, and I think that's going to change the whole game if you can win the battle in the trenches, regardless of what's happening, run, pass, whatever Utah's trying to throw at you. If you can take that battle, which is a quote unquote battle that you're going to lose more often than not, and win that I think that's really the key, which is not something you say about many teams often. Utah's got a great offensive line, and they deserve a lot of credit for what they're doing over there.
Yeah, I think Andrew nailed it on the head there. This is a game that's going to be won in the trenches. You're going to need to get pressure on Dampier. You cannot give him time because he's just perfectly settled in the pocket if he wants to be, and will throw from the pocket and not have to run as much, especially if you're going to be plugging up the run game and not giving him a lot of those QB-designed runs up the middle or around the edge. But if you can hold that line, if you can get through a couple times and pressure Dampier into rushing those throws potentially, or getting rid of the A and B gap that he's going to try and take advantage of on those designed runs, that's where ASU is going to have its bread and butter in winning this game. And like I said before, the defense is going to have to step up for the offense here, especially if it's shorthanded. You're going to need to steal possessions. You're going to need to stop Utah from eating clock. And it's going to come down to the turnovers. If you turn the ball over, if you can get Utah to turn the ball over at least twice in this game, I think ASU's got a better chance to win than if you just leave it up to Jeff Sims and the offense to go and win a shootout.
with you guys having covered the offensive line as your key players, I'll turn away from that slightly. No denying that Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu are high impact players to overpower on that line, but I'm looking at if Dampier is able to get plays off, I'm keying in on Dallin Bentley coming off the line as a tight end. We've had he's had Ryan Davis as his leading receiver, but Bentley I think is the more crucial target to watch, especially down in the red zone, leading Utah with 3 receiving touchdowns on the season. I'm looking at minimizing the impact that they can get out of the tight end position and forcing Dampier to rush those throws and not be ready in the pocket. But that's really the key takeaway for me on who the defense needs to watch out for. Do we dare hazard a guess at predictions for this game?
I'll start off. I'm not gonna say who's gonna win necessarily, but regardless, I thought this was gonna be a lower scoring game. I was talking to Chris Cartman on Wednesday, and he kind of had the same thought of it might take 20 points to win, or 25, or a low number. I think I'll go lower than that. Of what I was thinking earlier in the week. Now that we know Levitt could be out, I think it might take like 18 to win. Just something just lower than what everyone's expecting. And it's going to be kind of an ugly game, especially if there's weather. I wouldn't be surprised between the two teams. There's more than a half dozen turnovers. It would be an uncharacteristic game from either team. Neither team's really built on turning the ball over that much. But at the end of the day, this could be one of those Pac-12 after dark games, even though the Pac-12 is technically dead.
Pac-12 never dies.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't know who's going to win this game. I'll be honest, I'm having a little bit of the same feelings I had going into the TCU game, just because Utah is one of those opponents you don't want to overlook. They may not be ranked, but they play like a ranked team. I mean, like Joel Klatt has said it best before, death taxes in Utah football. They're always hanging around. They're always pretty good. Last year was a fluke. I think this is going to be a season-defining game for ASU one way or another. This is either going to be ASU's catapult moment into the Texas Tech game, or this could be their Cincinnati game from last year, and it could be a moment for them to have to reset again and run the table if they're going to have any sort of chance. But with, like Andrew said, with weather, this is going to get ugly. This is probably going to be a turnover-heavy game. I'm with you on the low scoring, although I do believe it's going to be 20 or more to win. I just don't think you're going to have a whole lot more than that. I think this might be like a 2017 type of game where first one, like you said, first one to 20 wins.
I am going to invoke the gospel according to Dr. Ian Malcolm. Life finds a way. And I am going to steer into my cheerily optimistic demeanor and say that ASU does find a way to win this game. I'm in agreement across the board with you guys that this is going to be a low-scoring affair. I think that it is a 21-14 final. Again, like you guys have both said, turnover-heavy game. I'm expecting, like you guys said, half a dozen turnovers combined, but it's going to come down to who wins the turnover battle and who wins the battle down in the trenches, and who can be better prepared for the weather that is expected to be hitting this weekend.
I'm going to interject here with a little breaking news because we're recording this in the middle of Thursday Night Football, but former Sun Devil running back great Cam Scadaboo just ran for a hat trick of touchdowns on Thursday Night Football for the New York Giants, crushing the Philadelphia Eagles currently.
That is good for one of my 3 fantasy football teams. So
anybody who has Scadaboo on their fantasy team is a very, very happy camper tonight. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting to note too, tight ends coach Jason Mons, you coached Devin Dampier in high school, so just an interesting tie there. From what I've heard or what I've from coaches is that, yeah, Jason Mons has been saying, yeah, he's good. He might wreck us, type of a thing. Is that they didn't say that exactly, but it's kind of
Heavily
the
implied.
vibes I was getting. But it'll be an interesting game to watch. Dillingham even said, "I wish I would have recruited him harder, having known all this." Because local kid from northern Phoenix, I believe, was where he went to high school. Memory serves me right on where all the high schools are here. And I don't know much. I don't geography. Sometimes my strong suit, sometimes not.
He went to Saguaro High School in Scottsdale for a little bit of live fact checking there. So definitely a Valley product. But with the nice connection of going up against a former coach, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
Absolutely. I'll think it'll be an exciting game to watch on Saturday.
Well, you and I will both be keenly watching it from Mullet Arena. Austin, we'll rely on you for your dual screen abilities to reliably cover this game. But there we
I
have
will
it.
try to stay awake. That's a 10:15 p.m. kickoff on the East Coast.
I believe in you. You got this. But there we have it, folks. It's a tough matchup up in Salt Lake City. Both the Devils and the Utes looking for supremacy in the Big 12 early on in the season, both coming off bye weeks and looking for the inside track to the Big 12 championship. For Austin Bundy and Andrew Hazlett, once again, I'm Tom Harden. Thank you all for listening, and be sure to follow the rest of our content previewing this weekend's game on Devils in Detail.